Come with me. We will wander far. We will live in strange lands. You with me, and I forever with you.
On November 17, 1721, Prince Edward Island's only documented witch burning took place. A young French woman, Marie, had inspired unrest in the Mi'kmaq community living near Port Leois. 2 people had been killed, the girl's mother and the son of the Mi'kmaq chief. She was rumored to have supernatural powers and to have bewitched the water around the fort. With the new settlement hanging in the balance, the settlers did the one thing they could. They burned Marie to death. The tale of Marie Granville has been told on Prince Edward Island for centuries. Was a witch burned on the island? Was her name Marie? Let's start our search with the best-known version of the story. In 1939, Helen Champion published a book entitled Over on the Island. It's a travelogue, which tells the story of Helen and her friend Jean cycling around the entire province, sleeping in a tent, looking for pirate treasure, and gathering tall tales and island legends. The 2 of them cook on an open fire, deal with clueless Yankees and cranky locals, and encounter occasional ghosts. It was noted in an article in the Charlottetown Guardian on May 27, 1939, as a book for all islanders, and is heartily recommended to all, at home and abroad, as well as all our summer visitors. 3 days later, the Guardian was back to report that the Toronto Star had given the book a glowing review. They quoted that paper's reviewer. I do not recall having read any Canadian book of travel in which such a wealth of amusing stories are told with more gusto. The new roads throughout the island have turned it into a genuine tourist paradise. And I can enthusiastically share Miss Champion's eulogies of its many charms and irresistible allure. Helen came by her interest in cataloging the island honestly. She was the great-great-great-granddaughter of Samuel Holland, famous and infamous Dutch cartographer, responsible, among other things, for the way the island is split up into a grand collection of long rectangles. Helen grew up in O'Leary, majored in Greek and history at Dalhousie, and got her master's and PhD at King's University in London. Her doctoral thesis was on Scottish immigration to Prince Edward Island. She died in 1968, at only 58 years old. But in 1939, she was 29, and a history buff full of boundless energy, living an academic life many could only dream of. She had previously written articles on history in The Guardian and sent impassioned letters to the editor about the need for a provincial museum, something which in her eyes was just as vital as the new paved roads that now span the province, enticing a new wave of visitors and encouraging Helen's summer biking trek. Islanders who read Over on the Island couldn't help but be thrilled to hear every little bay and inlet and hamlet described in minute detail. Helen and Jean ate with local farmers in Rustico, got sunburned at Panmure Island, experienced a communist society in Belle River, and went hunting for ghosts along the edge of Point Prim. But it's the story it relates of Prince Edward Island's only alleged witch burning that particularly piques interest. Helen is at the ruins of Fort Leois, a site which still features the earthworks of the British fort that replaced the French one after the fall of Louisbourg in 1758. That year was the beginning of a new tragedy for French settlers on Ile de Saint-Jean, as it was then called. It was the beginning of a grand deportation of Acadians, a deportation which ended in death at sea for hundreds of them. as they made the winter crossing to France. Nearby, just down the hill from the site of the fort, there was a Mi'kmaq settlement. And while few traces remain of the French and English presence in this spot, one of the island's 4 reserves is situated today quite close to where that settlement was located. In Helen's story, when she's approached by local Mi'kmaq children to see if she'd like to buy a basket, she tells them a Mi'kmaq tale of a French woman and her daughter who come to the island seeking their relatives.
They wandered from place to place. Wherever they went, they were welcome and popular. They lived with the Mi'kmaq community near St. Peter's Bay, and their reputation plummeted with the white locals. They participated in the rituals of the Mi'kmaq, and strange tales began to spread about them. One traveler saw Marie's mother receiving a bag of gold from a hand that rose out of the river. Soon, Marie's impending marriage to Cocteauquasi, the son of the Mi'kmaq chief, was announced. She and her mother made their way by canoe to Leois, where her mother would catch a ship to the south to retrieve her late husband's pirate treasure as a dowry. But misfortune struck. Their canoe floated empty past the fort, and they were discovered. Marie's mother was dead, and Marie was clinging to life. Cocteauquasi, Marie's fiancé, was able to heal her with a sacred stone from his community, but the stone was destroyed. When he and Marie married, he was killed by a discontented member of his tribe. Reportedly, Marie lived on her own, in a cabin near the bay, away from the Mi'kmaq community which had shunned her. She wandered the shore in her bridal costume, singing songs and bewitching the waters. She was captured, charged as a witch, and held at the fort. She was sentenced to be burned near the Black Cross, which early French missionaries had erected nearby. Father Medardus, the priest at Leois, heard her confession before the chill November day when she was executed.
I did no wrong. My parents are dead. In the shady woods, my mother and I lived. The stars and the wind spoke to her. They killed her at my side. Save me. We will wander far. We will live in strange lands. You with me, and I forever with you.
In the burning pile, she sang. The song's joyful, sweet melodies sounded to me like the rustle of springtime showers falling in the night. The flames reached her naked form, but the weird song pierced through the flames.
It's a striking story. Much of it seems to be drawn from an article in the Charlottetown Guardian, published in 1935 under the headline, Mi'kmaq Prayer Book Foretells a Dying Race. According to the article, Sosep, a Mi'kmaq chief, had found a letter in French inside the cover of a Mi'kmaq prayer book and brought it to Frank Diedmeyer, the American consul, to be placed in the Smithsonian Museum. The letter tells the story of the courtship and marriage of La Bel Marie, in much the same detail as Helen's version. Reportedly, it was written by a French missionary at Leois during the incident. In the story, Cocteauquasi finds Marie near death and her mother scalped as they had been making their way to the fort in a birch canoe in order to catch a ship south to retrieve pirate treasure hidden up and down the coast of North America by Marie's father. The letter states, "Although the waters were quite chilly and the depth of the awesome spring La Grande Source great, the young chief plunged into the bubbling fountain and shortly reappeared with the sacred relic, the stone of Minneota. Marie recovered, but the patient in whose cure the stone of Minneota had been used was not of the Mi'kmaq race. As Cocteauquasi undertook to lift the relic off the ground to carry it back to the fountain, it crumbled into dust, and since that fateful day, the members of the Mi'kmaq tribe have become smaller and smaller, and soon the last of their race will join the great Manitou in the land of the setting sun." The story goes on that someone in Cocteauquasi's tribe, feeling betrayed, shoots him as he is being married to Marie. Heartbroken, she wanders the woods and shoreline still dressed in her wedding dress. Sometime later, she is taken into custody by the French. The letter was reportedly transferred to the Smithsonian Museum collection. But when island historian Carrie Holman inquired about it several years after, the museum could no longer locate it. In the June 1899 issue of Prince Edward Island magazine, there's another telling of the story of Bel Marie. In this story, written by Jesse Hogg, Marie is the daughter of a Mi'kmaq chief who falls in love with a French soldier. The Mi'kmaq man who she was betrothed to shoots at the Frenchman during their wedding, but Marie steps in front of the arrow and is killed. "I saved you," she says. "I saw it coming." In a postscript, Hogg writes, "The above story is founded on an Indian tale, the characters of which existed in the last century when a French garrison held possession of Port Leois. The Indians at Rocky Point tell the story at the present day. The exact place on Warren Farm where the tragedy is said to have taken place is still pointed out." So what are we to believe? The land that used to be Warren Farm includes the location where Marie is purported to have been burned. At the mouth of the harbor, where the lighthouse currently stands, the French settlers erected a black cross. The letter states Marie was burned between Point de la Flemme and the Black Cross. So, is this tale still told by the Mi'kmaq at Rocky Point? Over 120 years after Jesse Hogg said it still was?
This area definitely has numerous spirits that are around, like just kind of haunting, I guess you could say. Specifically, we knew about this lady. She had been spotted by even my daughter, who had mistakenly thought that it was me. So much so that she actually followed her, thinking that it was me, until I had called her name. And whenever she realized that it wasn't me, she became very spooked by it. As a baby, this woman would rock her cradle, would stand over her at night. We could hear her in the baby monitor. I never heard her sing. No, just talking in a very soft voice, like her walk was very soft, her demeanor is very soft, and her hair is very long, and it's not braided, it's just kind of blowing in the wind. Whenever my family first moved here, there was a common story about a family where you could hear a woman screaming, and my uncles would go out to try to find this woman, and it was always in the fall that this happened, and they could never find her. So I don't know if you have any documentation about when this might have happened to her.
November.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, I just got goosebumps. That's freaky. Okay, yeah. And I think certainly some aspects of both stories could be true. I just know myself that she's real. She's here. She's still very much a part of this community.
It's strange to imagine a story this widely told and retold could be entirely fabricated. But we'll never know exactly what parts of it are based on any firm fact. In any event, it's meant to be a haunting reminder of what happens when fear triumphs over reason, and those in power use it as a tool. Afterward, we, the readers, are left haunted by what has happened. Helen Champion wrote her version of the story far from the island, while studying in London, England. At some point while there, she was presented to the King and Queen. While on a voyage to Australia, she was diverted to Calcutta, where she stayed for several months. She became engaged. Later she left, the engagement broken. Her suitcase is on display at the Potato Museum in her hometown of O'Leary, and is decorated with many stamps from her wartime travels. Helen went on to write for the Halifax Herald for many years. She kept pigeons outside her office window. She was firm and opinionated and inquisitive. She never married. She died suddenly in 1968 from a massive heart attack, just as her father had 30 years earlier. He had never gotten to read over on the island. In Helen's version of the story,
Father Medardus fled from the place, unable to stand it any longer. But whenever and wherever he went, asleep or at prayer, the song went with him. 50 years later, as he lay dying, it still rang in his ears.
I saved you. Save me.
It may only be my imagination, but the melody of a song that I've never heard is still haunting me.